I was halfway through a crossword puzzle and sipping on my cold brew when I casually glanced out the kitchen window. That's when I spotted a woman in a glittery cover-up launching herself into my pool like she was headlining a water show at the Bellagio. That alone would have been strange enough, but right behind her came at least 6 others decked out in tuxedos and designer dresses marching in like it was some kind of red carpet event. At 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, uninvited, one guy was literally holding a selfie stick in one hand and a glass of rosé tilde copyright in the other. I almost choked on the word umbrella and rushed outside, arriving just in time to see none other than Karina S., that Karen from the HOA drifting by on a flamingo float like she owned the property. Now, I'm not someone who loses his temper easily. I've been part of this suburban circus for 5 years. And I've learned when to keep my powder dry. I'm the type who keeps receipts, fills out forms, and plays the long game. But there was something about Karen prancing through my backyard with her champagne-sipping entourage, as if they were filming an episode of Real Housewives of Ho County, that flipped a switch in me. I didn't shout, I didn't make a scene, I just leaned on the deck railing and said calmly, "Did the pool party invite get lost in the mail? Or are we just skipping straight to breaking and entering now?" Karen blinked, took a dainty sip from her mimosa, and replied, "Oh, I assumed you were out of town. And your pool it's just so elegant. Would have been ashamed to let it go unused. Plus, it's a networking event." She motioned toward a guy in a blazer standing ankle-deep in the shallow end, swiping through LinkedIn as if that made the whole intrusion perfectly reasonable. I recognized a few of the others from local council meetings. Semi-important types, visibly uncomfortable but not enough to walk away. That's Karen's superpower, an uncanny ability to mix boldness with just enough plausible deniability to keep people second-guessing themselves. I didn't bother arguing. Instead, I walked back inside, pulled up the security feed, backed it up to the cloud, and made a very specific call. Not to law enforcement, at least not yet. I rang up Leo, my 13-year-old nephew and part-time chaos strategist. "Grab the die kit," I said. "The prank pool project 1. He whooped loud enough to blow out my eardrum. Avatar mode activated. Here's what most people don't know: my pool is smart. I designed it that way. Sensors, chemical control systems, remote functions. Last year, Leo and I built a harmless prank setup for a Profulsa, an organic blue dye that activates via the jets. Totally safe, non-toxic. Never used it again. Until today. I gave them a solid 20-minute test, long enough to really soak in, get the skin nice and receptive. Then I pulled out my phone, tapped one button, and engaged the system. From the patio, I watched as a light mist began to swirl through the water. At first, nothing. Then came the puzzled looks. Then full-on chaos. Karen jerked upright on her float, stared at her arms, and let out a scream like she'd just discovered alien goo on her skin. The rest of her VIPs scrambled for the edges, shrieking and stumbling out of the water like it had turned to acid. They were blue, not just faintly tinted a deep, undeniable Smurf blue. The dye reacts to body heat and water absorption, and the more you try to scrub it, the darker it gets. Karen grabbed a towel, tried to wipe her face, and let out another scream as it turned indigo. "What did you do?" she shrieked, storming toward me like a furious glow stick. I held up my phone with the app open. "Oh no," I said flatly. "Did the exclusive VIP pool package not meet expectations?" I didn't even try to hide the grin. "Next time, maybe don't treat someone's private pool like a public splash pad." Naturally, she threatened to sue. Then she said she'd report me to the HOA. I reminded her politely, of course, that I wasn't the one trespassing, and that I had the entire event recorded, in HD, from multiple angles, including the moment she winked at one of the councilmen and said, "Don't worry, he won't mind. He's never home during the week." By the time they left soaked, blue, and cursing, I'd already sent a few hand-picked clips to my lawyer and a tip to the local news. Initially, I didn't intend to escalate. I just wanted them embarrassed enough to stay off my lawn forever. But Karen doesn't take humiliation lightly, and she definitely doesn't walk away when her status is on the line. She showed up the next morning, hands still blotchy blue, and handed me a printed letter on fake HOA letterhead. According to her, I was being fined for chemical sabotage, That's when I realized this wasn't just about a pool. This was a full-on turf war about influence, control, and ego. Karen had spent years maneuvering through the local social ladder, buttering up the council, bullying through HOA policies, all dressed up as community leadership. And I'd just knocked her off that pedestal publicly. I saw the look in her eye, the twitchy, red-veined desperation of someone who would rather burn it all down than admit defeat. So I kept cool, took a photo of the bogus fine, and called a contact at the state's real estate licensing board. Then I started digging, because if Karen wanted a war, she'd picked the wrong opponent. I have a brother-in-law in cybercrime, a nephew who built surveillance drones for fun, and a personal passion for crafting traps that walk the razor's edge of legality. And if she thought a blue dye prank was as bad as things could get, well, she had no idea what was coming next. Let's just say I don't merely play the long game, I engineer it, one sarcastic countermeasure at a time. The morning after the pool debacle, I expected Karen to lay low for at least a week, hiding her blueberry-hued shame behind blackout curtains and aloe. I was wrong. At precisely 8:03 a.m., she came stomping down my driveway, oversized sunglasses shielding her pride, a floppy sun hat jammed over her head, and clutched in her hand an obnoxiously bright blue folder like it held the nuclear launch codes. Her hands were still stained a smoothie-like shade of violet. I hadn't even taken my first sip of coffee before she rang the doorbell 3 times in a row, each press more irritated than the last. Leo, already awake and editing slow-motion footage of her aquatic meltdown for TikTok, looked at me and whispered, "Want me to activate the trapdoor?" "Not yet," I told him. "Let's see where this goes." I opened the door, plastering on my most cheerful fake smile. "Well, look who's still blue. I'd offer you sunscreen, but I hear it just seals the color in deeper." She gave me a smile that looked like it hurt to make and handed me the folder. "You're being fined by the HOA for conducting an unauthorized chemical incident," she said, as if she were personally exiling me from the kingdom. "Your POA released unknown agents into the environment. That's a violation of Article 7. Subsection D of our covenant." I opened the folder. Inside was a printout, a Comic Sans font, poorly aligned, no signature as topped with a glorious heading, "Official Homeowner Action Notice." I nearly lost it. "You typed this up yourself, didn't you?" I asked. "Is this an HOA document or a middle school science fair poster?" Karen stiffened. As the interim president of the HOA, I cut her off. "Interim implies someone appointed you. Who exactly voted you in?" She didn't answer, because we both knew the answer was, Karen did. We'd all ignored her made-up titles for years: a community director, neighborhood coordinator, chairwoman of Aesthetic Harmony. None of them were in their bylaws. But after the pool incident, she was clinging to any scrap of authority she could fabricate. "You can bring it up with the board," she huffed. "We're having an emergency meeting at my house tonight." Now that got my attention. Home meetings are supposed to take place at the community center with at least a week's notice. Karen, naturally, was bending the rules again. Desperation will do that to a person. "Fine," I said. "I'll attend, and I'll bring the actual bylaws just in case your imaginary legislation needs a reality check." That evening, Leo and I arrived fashionably 5 minutes late, out just enough to ruffle her feathers. Karen's house looked like it had been decorated by a wedding planner on caffeine overload. Folding chairs lined in neat little rows, a podium wrapped in marble print contact paper, and a microphone hooked up to a karaoke speaker. Around 10 people had shown up, mostly the elderly regulars who just wanted trimmed hedges and predictable property taxes. And up front, the so-called VIPs from the pool, still faintly Smurfile, lined up like they were attending a budget version of the State of the Union. Karen launched into a speech filled with words she clearly didn't understand. "We have endured an outrageous assault on community harmony," she said, waving vaguely in my direction. "Chemical warfare in a residential pool is no laughing matter." Leo leaned over. "Did she just say warfare?" I nodded. "Give her a minute, she'll accuse me of violating the Geneva Convention next." When it was my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked to the podium, dropped a hefty binder labeled Actual HOA Bylaws with a satisfying thud, and let the silence stretch. I cleared my throat. "Karen isn't president. There's no provision for impromptu meetings like this. And Article 9 clearly states that no fines can be issued without a quorum vote, which, spoiler alert, we don't have. A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. A retired dentist in the back raised his hand. Wait. Is this even an official meeting? Karen flushed crimson beneath her Smurf blue tint. You're being disruptive, she snapped. You need to leave. I crossed my arms. You're hosting a fake home meeting in your living room to fine me for trespassing. You committed. I'm staying right here. The karaoke mic let out a dramatic squeal. One of her blue-tinted guests, a man in a bow tie, leaned over and whispered something into her ear. Karen's eyes twitched. Then, in a move so theatrical it deserved a standing ovation, she pointed at me and shouted, "If he won't leave, then maybe it's time we replace him." I blinked. Replace me? As what? I'm just a guy with a pool, she smirked. You're the chair of the Neighborhood Safety Subcommittee, which, to be clear, is not a real thing. Apparently, she had created an official-looking org chart and assigned everyone pretend roles. According to her new rules, I was in charge of outdoor hazard compliance. Her logic? That by booby-trapping my own pool, I had failed my non-existent duties and deserved to be removed. You're firing me from a fake position I never agreed to, for a crime you committed, I said. Ever thought about running for Congress? The meeting crumbled. Neighbors left, muttering under their breath. One guy called out, I only came for cookies. But Karen wasn't finished. The next morning, I stepped outside to find two bright orange cones at the edge of my yard, flanking a laminated sign that read, Under HOA investigation, a do not enter pool area. The sign even had a tiny logo at the bottom of what looked like a stock photo of the scales of justice. Classic Karen. At this point, Karen had officially crossed the threshold from mildly irritating to full-blown obsessed. So, I changed tactics. I reached out to Helena, the real elected HOA secretary, the same Helen that Karen had tried to undermine months ago with a barrage of passive-aggressive newsletters and fake subcommittee updates. Helen, bless her meticulous soul, had receipts, literal ones, and, as fate would have it, a lingering grudge. Together, we compiled a dossier. Every phony fine, every fabricated title, every unauthorized meeting Karen had hosted over the past year. And then we struck gold, a reimbursement from the official HOA fund, which was supposed to be strictly for community development projects. The charge? A visit to a spa called Sea of Serenity for a blue exfoliating mud mask. I nearly fell out of my chair laughing. We put everything into a clean, unembellished PDF titled simply, Karen's HOA Activities, a documented timeline. No editorializing, no rant, just the facts. Then I sent it to every homeowner in the neighborhood. Within hours, the neighborhood message board blew up. Comments flooded in. She used our dues for bath bombs. So that's where the glitter cannon came from at the Easter egg hunt. Someone made a meme of Karen mid-scream in the pool, skin still tinted blue, with the caption, HOA, a horribly overbearing authority. Leo had it printed on a t-shirt. Naturally, Karen retaliated. She posted a dramatic open letter accusing me of technobullying and running an illegal smear campaign via hacked Wi-Fi. She then called for an emergency vote to have me banned from the HOA entirely. Too bad for her. I'd already scheduled a proper vote at the official venue, with correct notice, backed by Helen and two other legitimately elected board members. When Karen arrived late, half flustered, half blue, and visibly rattled as she walked into a room where actual minutes were being recorded, ballots were being cast, and homeowners were finally ready to put an end to the madness. The vote? Unanimous. Karen was stripped of all leadership, both real and the many imaginary roles she had invented. Her expression crumpled like a deflated flamingo float. She stormed out, wordless, leaving behind a pile of homemade fines and counterfeit notices that I later turned into kindling for a well-earned celebratory fire pit night. At that point, I figured it was over. If she'd just accepted her fall from grace with even a hint of dignity, I would have let the whole Pooh saga quietly fade into backyard folklore. But Karen wasn't wired for retreat. She had no reverse gear, and the final breadcrumb she left behind, a ridiculously thick, matte black business card with silver foil lettering, led me straight to the truth behind her so-called VIP guest list. The card belonged to one Miles Ditt, CEO of a suspiciously vague company called Horizon Nest Realty. I'd never heard of it, but the logo matched the banners I'd seen around the nearby district. Empty plots of land with flashy future luxury living signs slapped on every fence. One quick check with the state's business registry confirmed it. Horizon Nest had only been formed 6 months ago, and listed Karen as their community integration consultant. I almost spit out my tea. Integration? Karen couldn't integrate herself into a folding chair without causing a scene. Leo and I went deep, research mode, fully activated. Miles did was slick and a type who wore $2,000 suits to zoning board meetings and used buzzwords like monetize local character and optimize neighborhood equity. His game was simple: buy distressed or undervalued properties, slap on a coat of paint and the word luxury, and sell them to city-weary transplants at triple the price. And our neighborhood was a prime target. Why? Because we weren't within city limits. Our HOA was technically self-governing, light on structure, lighter on enforcement. In other words, the perfect place for a quiet takeover. That explained everything. Karen's fake titles, the rogue fines, even the blue pool stunt. It wasn't about petty revenge. She was trying to intimidate me, push me to sell, or even better, get me disqualified from ownership using some bogus infraction. And I wasn't alone. 3 houses down, Mr. Castellano had just reluctantly sold his home due to health issues. Funny, considering I'd seen him jogging every morning with a Doberman that could chase down a motorcycle. A little digging showed his property had been purchased by a shell corporation directly tied to Horizon Nest. I went to Helen. She was in the middle of organizing last year's BBQ receipts by type of mustard when I unloaded everything: spa reimbursements, the real estate firm, the phony leadership positions, all of it. She paused, narrowed her eyes. She's trying to soft evict people, Helen said. Create tension, shake their confidence, get them to sell before they realize how much their homes are actually worth. She was furious and ready. I asked if there was any trace of official correspondence between Karen and Horizon Nest. Helen just grinned. No, she said, but we did set up an HOA email address for her. And she never logged out. We logged in. Jackpot. The inbox was a mess of barely coherent drafts addressed to Miles Ditt, full of erratic capitalization and excessive ellipses. Subject lines like, secured another one, told him pool die was a filter glitch. We're covered. And then there were the attachments, photos of neighborhood houses, mine included, labeled with phrases like, needs pressure campaign, likely to fold if threatened zoning fine. Then came the smoking gun, a reply from Miles himself. Close 3 more by next quarter and we'll confirm your seat on the new development board. Still need the pool guy out. He's slowing the numbers. I stared at the screen. So this wasn't about pool etiquette. This was a quiet siege. Karen had turned our hoe into a Trojan horse he dragged through the gates with fake titles and blue glitter, and hollowed out to make room for a corporate land grab. Karen had gone from being a nuisance to launching a full-blown, wannabe hostile takeover. She wasn't just flexing made-up authority, she was trying to reshape the entire neighborhood into some Horizon Nest-branded nightmare. And apparently, I was the final holdout. Not because I was important, just because I refused to fold. That same evening, I submitted everything in the full email thread, the security footage, copies of forged fines, and a handful of unflattering screenshots of Karen Meadow Bloom meltdown to the County Housing Authority and the Better Business Bureau. But I wasn't stopping there. If Karen wanted to play corporate power games, I'd play right back. So I called my cousin Rochela, a real estate attorney with a reputation for making grown hedge fund managers cry on the witness stand. She hates gentrifiers more than I do. 2 days later, she rolled up in stilettos sharp enough to perforate asphalt and a blazer that could give a cease and desist with just a glance. You want this burned to the ground? She said, thumbing through the evidence. Let's light the match. Step 1. We filed a cease and desist on Horizon Nest signage and activity in the neighborhood, false advertising, unauthorized solicitation, the works. Step 2. We notified the State Planning Commission that several property acquisitions had been done under misleading or fraudulent conditions. Step 3. Rachel drafted a class action complaint co-signed by 27 residents alleging psychological coercion, falsified HOA communications, and intimidation tactics courtesy of one very blue Karen. Then came the real fireworks. Rachel served Karen with a formal civil hearing notice, citing impersonation of an HOA officer, breach of fiduciary duty, and neighborhood-level fraud. That was the tipping point. 3 days later, I went to grab the mail and saw it. A Horizon Nest for sale sign staked in Karen's lawn, spray painted across it in bright red, temporarily withdrawn. The podium, gone. The cones, vanished. Karen, nowhere to be seen. Her car had disappeared. Blinds were drawn tight, and the porch sat eerily quiet. But I knew better. She wasn't gone. She was waiting, plotting, and sure enough, her next move arrived the following morning. It wore a clipboard and had a name tag that read Greg A. Code Enforcement. He showed up with a grim face and a sheet of paper. Anonymous complaint, he said. Your pool's filtration system is reportedly exceeding local noise limits. I raised an eyebrow. Wanna hear it for yourself? I walked over, tapped my phone, and activated silent mode on the smart system. The pump gave off a soft hum barely louder than a whisper. Greg leaned in. That's quieter than my coffee maker. I showed him the decibel reading. 42. He sighed. Yeah. This is garbage. But protocol is protocol. He was just about to leave when Leo sprinted over, breathless, holding his phone like it was a sacred relic. Uncle, you've gotta see this. He played a drone video on screen, grainy night footage showing Karen 2 nights earlier, sneaking through the neighborhood with a flashlight, burying something near my fence. Greg leaned closer. What is that? Leo zoomed in. It was a tiny Bluetooth speaker, stashed under the mulch, programmed to emit high-pitched noise at irregular intervals, enough to trigger a complaint, I said. Greg's jaw tightened. So, she planted the noise herself? Timestamps right here, I replied. The night before your report. Greg rubbed his forehead. Yeah, this is going in the file. By that afternoon, the investigation had pivoted away from me and squarely onto Karen. The county launched a full code audit of her property. Turns out, she'd converted her garage into an illegal guest suite allegedly for Horizon Nest consultants. She was also rerouting electricity through a secondary breaker box to avoid detection. Leo and I sat on the porch, popcorn in hand, as 2 inspectors knocked on her door and began photographing the backyard. The VIP days, officially over. I thought maybe this was the final chapter. Then my phone buzzed. It was Rachel. You might want to sit down, she said. Karen just filed a lawsuit. She's accusing you of harassment, sabotage, and emotional trauma. Civil court is rarely the stuff of gripping legal dramas, but the day Karen showed up wearing a pastel power suit, navy heels, and what looked suspiciously like leftover Smurf dye on her knuckles, the courthouse felt like it was vibrating with anticipation. She arrived with not 1 but 2 lawyers. One looked polished, the other looked like he was on his 3rd cup of panic. They carried a stack of printed screenshots and mostly pixelated freeze frames from my pool camera highlighted in neon pink. Naturally, her opening argument that I had dyed her and her distinguished guests without consent, causing permanent emotional distress, reputational harm, and a skin condition. She accused me of installing a hazardous prank system, claimed Leo had militarized drones for surveillance, said I orchestrated an entire campaign of HOA sabotage. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with a resting expression that could melt stone, raised an eyebrow. Karen's lawyer presented a photo of her leg, showing what looked like a mild sunburn, and a note from a holistic skincare advisor. Is that scented paper? The judge asked. It's lavender, the lawyer said, proudly. The judge didn't laugh, but she didn't stop me from smirking, either. Rachel, to her credit, hadn't even taken off her sunglasses yet. Rachel stayed composed, collecting every outlandish claim like they were courtroom trophies. When it was our turn to speak, she rose with the calm confidence of someone who'd buried far more dangerous adversaries in footnotes and deposition transcripts. Your Honor, she began smoothly, placing a thick binder on the bench. What we're looking at isn't harassment or petty sabotage. This is a clear case of trespassing, document forgery, neighborhood intimidation, and an orchestrated attempt to manipulate local real estate led by the plaintiff herself. She clicked her remote. The courtroom monitor blinked to life with high-res drone footage. Karen creeping into my yard at night, flashlight in hand, burying the noise device. The next clip showed her lounging by the pool with a mimosa, directing guests like it was her backyard. Then, images of the fake whole letters we had collected. The judge hadn't even banged the gavel yet, and Karen's left-hand attorney already looked like he was reconsidering his entire career path. The room stirred as Rachel walked everyone through a clean timeline. She read aloud from Karen's emails to Horizon Nest Realty, highlighting phrases like soft targeting and pressure strategies. We submitted internal HOA emails that proved Karen had unofficially appointed herself to power and bent neighbor after neighbor into compliance. Then came the knockout, a screenshot of a text from Karen to someone named Miles Ditt. It read, "Once I get the pool guy out, the rest will fall like dominoes." Karen immediately objected aloud and Dramatica, arguing those were private messages between consenting adults. The judge, deadpan, asked, "Consenting to what, exactly?" Karen fell silent for the first time in days. The judge ordered the bailiff to collect the full case file and set a continuation hearing, instructing the county's Civil Integrity Unit to investigate further. Karen's absurd lawsuit had opened the floodgates for a full-scale legal audit, not just into her, but into Horizon Nest itself. Outside the courthouse, word had already gotten out. Local reporters waited with cameras rolling. I kept my head down, but Leah, decked out in a shirt that read Avatar Pool Club, founder, was giving interviews like he just won a Peace Prize for tactical mischief. Karen tried to slip away quietly, head down, but a mic caught her mid-step. "Miss Langenstein, are you resigning from your HOA position during the investigation?" Her reply, "I am the HOA." Then she promptly tripped over a loose cobblestone. The footage aired on Channel 6 for 3 days straight. You'd think that would have been the final blow. But no, Karen wasn't done. She just changed tactics. A few days later, I got an email, no sender listed, but the tone was unmistakably riddled with overused ellipses, random capitalization, and cryptic threats. It accused me of destroying a visionary woman's legacy and colluding with known anarchists to derail peaceful neighborhood development. Peaceful. The word practically laughed at me. This, from the same person who snuck into my yard, staged a fake HOA, and tried to weaponize noise complaints. But the most unsettling part wasn't the threat, it was the line, "You may have won the courtroom battle, but the development contract is still live. You can't stop what's already begun." I called Rachel. That night, she pulled the most recent property records. 3 houses had quietly changed hands, 2 of them in the last month. Horizon Nest was still pushing forward. Karen might have lost public support, but she'd already laid the groundwork to flip the block quietly, strategically. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about real estate power. So, I escalated, not with drama, with paperwork. We filed Freedom of Information Act requests on every Horizon Nest permit. The results: a mess of zoning requests disguised as infrastructure upgrades, hidden under layers of shell companies. Then we created a flyer, delivered to every single mailbox in the neighborhood. It laid out exactly how Horizon Nest operated, using scare tactics to pressure homeowners, offering lowball buyouts, and transforming properties into sterile luxury prefab units. Next, we hosted a town hall meeting, at the Real Community Center, this time booked through proper channels. Karen tried to cancel it by calling it an unauthorized protest. The mayor's office sent an observer just to be sure. What they witnessed was a packed room and a full presentation of 5 counties worth of Horizon Nest tactics, backed by records and sworn statements. We exposed how Karen had forged votes, cooked HOA budgets, and used her so-called authority for personal leverage. Then came the highlight. Mr. Castellano, the Doberman jogger, stood up. Turns out, Horizon Nest had already listed his home on their marketing site even though he still lived there. They'd assumed he'd cave eventually and filed promotional materials in advance. By the end of the night, 42 homeowners signed a petition to dismantle the current HOA structure and bring in an independent review board. Karen's backing evaporated. Even one of her staunchest defenders stood up and said, "I just wanted to sell my house, not sign up for a cult." 3 days later, the town issued a full stop work order on all Horizon Nest developments in the area, citing pending fraud investigations. Karen's name disappeared from the Horizon website. Her LinkedIn changed from community strategist to currently exploring new opportunities. No one knew if she'd been fired, had resigned, or been devoured by corporate liability clauses. But her influence gone. Rachel remained composed, treating each ridiculous claim like a trophy added to her collection. When it was our turn, she stepped forward with the unshakable calm of someone who'd already dismantled fiercer opponents than Karina, armed not with drama, but documentation. "Your Honor," she began, placing the thick binder onto the bench with precision. "This isn't about harassment or petty sabotage. What we're actually dealing with is confirmed trespassing, document falsification, intimidation tactics, and a deliberate effort to manipulate real estate led by the plaintiff." She tapped her remote. The courtroom screen lit up with sharp drone footage. First, Karen caught in the act of sneaking into my yard under the cover of night to plant the noise device. Then, a second clip, her entertaining guests by my pool, mimosa in hand. The slideshow shifted to images of the fabricated whole letters. The gavel hadn't dropped yet, but Karen's second attorney already looked like he was reconsidering every life choice. A quiet stir rippled through the courtroom as we walked through a detailed timeline. Rachel introduced email exchanges between Karen and Horizon Nest Realty, using phrases like soft targeting and leverage points. We submitted internal HOA communication showing how Karen had assumed power without due process and coerced neighbors into compliance. Then came the fatal blow. A screenshot of a text Karen had sent to Miles did that said, "Once I get the pool guy out, the rest will fall like dominoes." Karen erupted, dramatically objecting, insisting the emails were private messages between consenting adults. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Consenting to what, exactly?" Silence. For the first time in days, Karen had nothing to say. The judge instructed the bailiff to gather the entire case file for review and set a continuation hearing, granting time for the county's Civil Integrity Unit to investigate. That's right, Karen's ludicrous lawsuit had inadvertently triggered a full-scale legal audit, not just of her own dealings, but of Horizon Nests as well. Outside, news had already spread. Reporters were gathered on the courthouse steps, cameras rolling. I stayed out of the spotlight, but Leah, wearing a t-shirt that proudly read Avatar Pool Club, founder, was giving interviews like he just orchestrated a revolution in backyard activism. Karen tried to make a quick exit, keeping her head down, but a reporter managed to catch her with a mic. "Miss Langenstein, are you stepping down from your HOA role during the investigation?" Karen's answer, "I am the HOA." She then immediately tripped over a loose cobblestone. That footage aired for 3 straight days on Channel 6. You might assume that would have marked her downfall. But no, Karen didn't disappear. She regrouped. Her next move came subtly. An anonymous email appeared in my inbox. The writing was a dead giveaway. Scattered ellipses, excessive capitalization, and that same passive-aggressive tone. It accused me of destroying a woman's life work and teaming up with known radicals to dismantle a peaceful community development plan. Peaceful. That word stuck with me like a joke without a punchline. This was the same woman who trespassed on my property, aimed targeted harassment at my home, and tried to pass off a fake government seal on a fake HOA sign. But the most chilling part of the message wasn't the insult, it was the threat. "You might have won the courtroom battle, but the development contract is still active. You can't stop what's already in progress." I called Rachel. That night, she pulled property records. 3 homes had quietly changed ownership, 2 in the last 30 days. Horizon Nest wasn't slowing down. If anything, they were speeding up. Karen might have lost her grip on public support, but the infrastructure she'd set in motion was still running. This had moved beyond personal vendettas. She wasn't just trying to embarrass me, she was trying to flip the entire neighborhood. So, I launched a full counter-strike here, not with fire, but with forms. We weaponized bureaucracy. We filed FOIA requests on every permit Horizon Nest had submitted. What came back was riddled with inconsistencies: zoning requests disguised as infrastructure proposals, all buried beneath a web of shell companies. Next, we distributed flyers to every house in the neighborhood. The flyer broke down Horizon Nest's tactics in plain English: how they identified vulnerable homeowners, pressured them with fear tactics, bought them out below market value, and transformed their properties into soulless prefab luxury units. Then came the town hall. This time, we legally reserved the real community center and invited everyone in the area. Karen tried to have the event shut down, claiming it was an unauthorized protest. The mayor's office sent an observer, just in case. What they witnessed was a full exposé tilde copyright. Slide after slide documented Horizon Nest's operations across 5 counties, supported by concrete records and witness statements. We revealed how Karen had rigged votes, cooked financial reports, and used the HOA as a launchpad for her own ambitions. The best moment, Mr. Castellanoa the jogger with the Doberman stood up and shared that his home had been listed on Horizon Nest's website while he still lived in it. They'd already created marketing material assuming he would be gone. By the end of the night, 42 homeowners signed a petition to dissolve the current HOA leadership and establish a neutral oversight board. Karen's support collapsed. Even one of her longtime defenders stood and said, "I just wanted to sell my house, not join a cult." 3 days later, the town issued a freeze on all Horizon Nest development permits in the neighborhood, pending a fraud investigation. Karen's title disappeared from the Horizon Nest website. Her LinkedIn quietly changed from community strategist to currently seeking opportunities. No one could say for sure if she'd been fired, resigned, or devoured by her own legal fallout. But one thing was certain, her reign was over. "Everything we posted is public information," I said evenly. "And I've got copies of your emails with Karen, along with video of your so-called VIP event trespassing on private property." He let out a slow breath through his nose. "What do you want?" I smiled. "It's simple. I want you out. I want Horizon Nest to pull completely out of this neighborhood. I want the 3 properties you locked up released from contract. And I want a written notice sent to every resident you contacted, clearly stating your development is finished." He folded his arms. "And if I say no?" Leo stepped forward behind me, holding a camcorder. I didn't need to answer. "Then you're going to be front-page news on 3 local sites," I said, "and the centerpiece of a Reddit post that's already pushing 78,000 upvotes." Miles held his gaze, unmoving, but the men beside him weren't so confident. They shifted, glanced around, said nothing. "That's blackmail," he snapped. "No," I said calmly. "That's accountability. And I'll take this to every regulatory body, ethics board, and housing oversight committee from here to Sacramento." "You think this is a PR problem? Wait until someone starts poking around your Florida holdings." That landed. He stared for a beat, then turned on his heel without another word. He got in his car and drove away. By the afternoon, every Horizon Nest sign had been pulled down, their listings vanished from the web, and before the weekend hit, a blanket email went out to the entire neighborhood. Horizon Nest Realty was officially ceasing all development operations in Fort Bend. Dry tone, crystal clear message. We had won, but the true resolution came a week later. We gathered not in Karen's house, not under false pretenses, but in the local community center. This time, it was properly booked, openly announced, and actually about the neighborhood. Helen stood at the front and introduced a new HOA framework, of voluntary, with limited authority, strictly for maintaining shared spaces and organizing events. No drama, no permanent positions of power, just neighbors, working together. We voted. It passed. People stayed after. There was laughter, kids weaving between folding chairs, and Leo played a dramatic slideshow of the Great Blue Flood, complete with music and a fake movie trailer. The mood felt light, real. Then I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Karen. She looked a broken bar different. Not exactly remorseful, but smaller. "Human." "I'm moving," she said. "Thought you'd want to know." "Out of state?" I asked. She nodded. "Oregon. My sister's got a guest house." There was a long pause. She shifted. "I wasn't always like this. After my husband died, a broken bar needed something. A purpose, structure. I thought if I could fix things and control things, people would respect me." I didn't respond immediately. Then, quietly, I said, "People don't respect control. They respect honesty." "You could have had that." "I know," she said, softly. Then she reached into her bag and handed me a small plastic pouch. Inside was the old flamingo floaty, deflated, patched with duct tape, and faintly stained blue. "A souvenir?" she said, with a crooked smile. "In case you ever forget just how nuts it all got." I took it. Karen left that night. No drama, no final monologue. Just one more person exiting a stage that had gotten far too crowded. And for the first time in what felt like forever, The neighborhood was still, not tense, not buzzing, quiet, the kind of quiet you don't notice until you remember how loud it used to be. Later that summer, Leo and I repainted the pool deck. We reworked the dye trigger to manual and installed new sensors, this time with an eye filter he coded himself. "What should we name it?" he asked. I looked at the faded float, now mounted above the pool pump like a badge of honor. "Call it the Karen Protocol," I said. He laughed. "Because sometimes the best revenge isn't a cloud of blue dye, or a courtroom victory, or viral internet fame. Sometimes the best revenge is a broken bar is peace, and a locked pool gate."